Hello, everyone, and we're back with another session. And next up, we are going to talk to you and we're going to look at how and what it means to design an IoT solution. With me today on this panel, I have a panel of experts, and we'll try to bring them on. Mathias Muehlfeld, the VP of Revenue and Operations for EMnify. Hello, Mathias. Welcome.
Hello, Nassia.
Hi. Gabriel Salvate, Director of Strategy and Business Development from BICS. Hello, Gabriel. Welcome to this session. Nick Earl, CEO of SI. Hi, Nick. Hi, good to see you again, sir. And Peter Johnson, the CEO of MConnected. Hi, Peter. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Fantastic. Well, gentlemen, it's an exciting panel, I would say, designing IoT solutions. I mean, we heard this morning about the numbers. We heard about 5G in private networks, and we heard just now from Andrew of what enterprises need and require from all of us. So to kick us off, I would like to ask you, how do you see the role of IoT in evolving, the role of IoT in designing the solutions evolving with everything that's been going on in the industry? And I'm going to ask every single one of you to briefly introduce yourself and give me a little bit of an insight. I'm going to start with you, Mathias.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Nassia, thank you again. It's a pleasure talking to all of you. My name is Mathias Muehlfelder. I'm German, as the name probably pronounces. I'm with EMnify since about 2.5 years, and I own what's called here revenue operations. So that means I own, in the end, all customer-facing teams, just not the sales teams directly, but everything what has to do with solution engineering, support, customer success management. That's why I also feel I can talk a lot about the topics Nassia just introduced. Word about EMnify. EMnify is a cloud IoT connectivity provider, and we really, drive the cloud innovation on the market together with our super network, so that kind of everybody on the world can get online wherever they need, whenever they need, and so on. I would pass it on back to you, Nassia.
Yes, and if Gabriel, how about you introduce yourself, and if you can also give us a couple of key points of where you think the designing of IoT is going.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Gabriel. I'm leading the product marketing at BICS. BICS is a worldwide leader on connectivity. So we play as MVNE, MVNO, having a solution called SIM for Things. So I've been working this market, I would say, for more than 12 years. So it was CDMA, 2G, M2M, now IoT. And when we talk about, how design solutions efficiently, I would say we cannot forget that IoT is not a product, not a solution, is an ecosystem composed by several, I would say, environments. It could be, let's say, the hardware part with chipset makers, module makers. Then we can move to the connectivity part, which we have the connectivity providers, and then finalizing with the application. Of course, I'm put this in a general way. There are much more than this, but then we have the cloud providers or the solution providers aggregating everything that can become from the field. So it's really good to have this conversation with all of you.
Thank you, Gabriel. And Nick, I'll come to you to introduce yourself and SI and give us your 2 minutes intro to this panel.
Hi, Nassia, and hi, everyone. I'm not sure I'll take 2 minutes. And I would start by pointing out that Nassia and I are not sharing the same living room. There's a very limited choice of virtual backgrounds on this platform. Yeah, I'm Nick Earl. I'm CEO of SI. Based in the UK, have about 1,000 customers for the Fortune 10. And we just pure IoT company and have been for 15 years. I think the way I would address your question, Nassia, is is on one particular angle, which is to do with where the IoT is right now on the adoption curve. In the big shift at the highest level is a shift to global. We have a lot of regional IoT. The industry is structured regionally. The regulators are structured regionally. The roaming agreements are structured to actually join regions together. But actually the customers, the enterprises, want global solutions because the ROI for IoT is single SKU, single product SKU. They want single manufacturing, single supply chain, single warranty. So the business outcome for creates the budget that pays all of our salaries. The holy grail is how do you create truly global IoT? And I'm going to take that angle because to create truly global IoT, for us at least at SI, it's three things. You've got to be agnostic on three completely levels. The first level of agnosticity is that you've got to be able to say, my solution works on every operator. It can't be a subset. It can't be a series of walled gardens. Secondly, you've got to be agnostic on roaming versus localization, which is the very hard one, because roaming agreements fail all the time. It's not public, but they fail all the time. Quotas are exceeded, and regulated certain countries you can't roam anyway. It's against the rules. So you've got to be able to choose either localization or roaming for every device at any point in time. And the third plane of agnosticity is you've got to be able to, going forward, be RAT agnostic, radio access type. Because right now the industry is siloed by cellular providers, LoRa providers, Wi-Fi providers, and there's going to be satellite and whatever. So you basically have got to have agnosticity on RAT. So you choose the best communication for the use case for the device at that time, at that location. So that's where I would say is that the design issues, we need to think about agnosticity or interoperability, agnosticity along those three planes.
Oh, that's very interesting. Always talk about agnostic IoT and both on the hardware side and vendor side. So that's quite interesting. And Pete, last but not least, how about you introducing yourself to us and give you your quick insights on the subject matter?
Thank you very much, Nassia. Pete Johnson, company called MConnected Limited. We know Nassia really well, and we've worked with her on certain projects. We don't use the word IoT anymore, which might be not what you want to hear. We're an asset intelligence company, and we like to work at the assets, understand the patent of an asset. It can be a sensor, a person, a military ship. So that's where we come from an IoT point of view. We're different. I'm different from the company's different from what you've just mentioned, because what you guys are doing, a lot of connectivity. We're right at the edge. We're putting edge devices in there. I'll give you a good example. Recently, we're doing a lot of work in carbon, and especially in peatland, where we are measuring a number of sensors in the ground to understand what the carbon sequestration is. So we're in that space with the edge, where you guys seem to be more connectivity. So we'll build our own base stations, and we use a lot of industry sensors. Where I think my vertical's going is to make the sensors more robust. I don't know what that was. Sorry, it wasn't more robust and small, and also to connect mainly through satellite, because some of the satellite modems now are tiny. I can show you a board now where the satellite dish is 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter, and it runs on 3.5 volts for 2 years. And I think from an edge point of view, that's where that's going. There you are, Nassia.
Thank you, Pete. So that's quite diverse, I would say, beginning to our conversation. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this, gentlemen. And Mathias, I'm going to circle back to you, and I would like to get some key considerations from yourself and your experience so far in the industry through EMnify. When we're designing for both scalability and efficiency, these IoT connected systems, what do we need to be aware of?
Yeah, so thanks for the question, Nassia. And I really think it's a very interesting one, because so when we talk to customers, right, like, first of all, I'd like to call out that we typically see two different sets of customers. We have the customers who already work on IoT devices, already have connected devices, know very well already what's going on, what their devices do, how they act and how they scale, and they know their plan. And then you have a complete different set of customers on every size, right? Which is what we would call the greenfield customers, which are the customers who basically get into this IoT market for whatever their driver is, right? They want to predict a predictive maintenance solution, or they want to develop something new for their product set or whatsoever, and they never played with IoT, and so basically they start from a very, very wide slate, right? And so just because of that, the approaches in order to create a scalable and efficient solution is a little bit different. But so overall, right, like when we talk to the customers, the feedback what we get and the feedback that we also give them is there are a few points you really should have in mind while building out a scalable and also in the end a efficient IoT solution, efficient IoT device fleet. The one thing is you need to think about data management and everything around that. So what do I mean? Like, think about how much data you want to even put over the wire, right? Like it can be just very, very fractional data, a few kilobytes. It can be really massive, right? So you need to have that in mind while you plan your solution. And when it comes to connectivity, and I know it's not about connectivity here, but like it's important you have in mind that, you know, you can go from very, very small kilobyte amounts to probably then also a few megabytes or a few hundred megabytes, because in order to be efficient, you ideally also want to run OTA updates to update your device fleet, because otherwise you would need to go there and do that manually and so on. So one thing to have in mind is always like your data management stuff. The other thing is everything what we would call nowadays everything around cloud and scalability, scalable architecture, scalable infrastructure, and so on. You want to build your solution in a way that it is really modular, that you use probably also some microservices which allow you to instantly scale up or scale down, ideally even fully automated in an auto-scaling way, in order to fulfill the needs you have today, but also to fulfill the needs you might have tomorrow, right? Like today you start with, I don't know, 100 devices, tomorrow you have 10,000 devices. Is your platform able to handle that? And is your provider also able to handle that? That's very important as well. The other thing we often talk about is use the specific, I now call it protocols for the lack of a better word, but I also mean radio access types. With protocols, you know, we speak about MQTT and those protocols which are basically very, very lightweight and efficient in order to communicate properly. Goes a bit back into the data management section, but use the efficient protocols because that allows you to scale over time. And then, of course, last not least, and that's also very, very important, think about security, because if you might run something small today, it might not, you know, be in your production system and production network, but you need to shield those devices and those IoT things in a way that, you know, nothing bad can happen. So meaning have that in mind from beginning on when you design your solution, so that later on when you scale it, you basically, you know, don't need to restart again just now to bring security in. And I think that's it in a summary, you know, what we talk often to customers about, and they often to us, about what you should have in mind when it's coming to designing scalable and then in the end efficient IoT solutions and device fleets out there.
Thank you, Matthias. As Gabriel mentioned earlier, we're talking more than solutions here. We're talking about designing and putting together an entire ecosystem. So, Gabriel, let's expand a little bit on this section. Let's look at how can we bring together the ecosystem in a successful way. If you have any use cases you can share with us where we can create effectively some balance.
Okay. No, I heard some nice statements during this first part. Of course, when we are talking about as a connectivity provider, we need to help customers in order. How can we support them to validate their solutions in the specific regions offering the best network, let's say a multi-IMSI solution, how we can help them to control the solution and etc. But going one step beyond, as I said, we need to think in the overall, in the ecosystem, and looking for a better customer experience, because here we can see this from a different angle. So we can have a B2B approach, we can have a B2C approach, right? So having the B2B approach, when companies like BICS are selling your solutions for customers, basically we are looking for developers and how we can generate or at least help the developers buying time during the development phase. Okay. And as I said about the ecosystem, and then I will bring a nice example outside the IoT world, and then I will bring this to the IoT world. We can see AWS. So AWS, everyone knows AWS. I would say it's the biggest cloud provider in the world. But when you are developing your solution, you can easily find different types of let's say products. So you can find solutions for IoT, you can find solutions for storage, you can find solutions for streaming, and that's it. So what they did, they compile different products in one ecosystem. And from the customer perspective, when they are developing, of course, there is I would say a multi-diversity team working in the hardware part, in the connectivity part, in the cloud part, trying to put everything together. How companies, let's say, how connectivity providers can help them to do that. And then I would like to bring to the attention one of the solutions we have called Connectivity Twin. That basically we play in the three areas. So we have SDKs, which means when the developer is preparing something on the hardware side, they can have the control of the device from the connectivity perspective. So these two items are working together. You can mirror our CMP, which means connectivity management platform, inside to another product. So you can pick this CMP and put inside to another, let's say, platform. Then you can have, for example, your DMP, your data analytics part, your connectivity management part in one single system. And we also have the cloud connected solution. So that's one important thing to emphasize here. So when we are helping them, it's important to always go this step beyond, because then we can help on the OTA part mentioned by Mathias. We can help them to control the device properly in real time. We can provide insights and etc. It's always about the ecosystem and not only about one single item properly.
That makes a lot of sense, what you mentioned there, Gabriel. And I wonder, gentlemen, there is a lot of information and a lot of discussion these days around AI-enabled IoT. And we're talking about designing IoT. And a thought came into my mind while Gabriel was talking and Mathias earlier. When should we be considering the role of AI in IoT within the ecosystem? Who wants to take that question? Because I know it wasn't part of the flow. It's just an impromptu one.
Nassia, I'll have
go ahead, Pete.
AI, as everybody knows, there's a lot of products in AI out there at this moment in time. You know the difference. I don't have to tell you about them, but there's certain ones now which we're looking at, and we call it the industrial AI system, where they look at big data lakes or even small data lakes or even data from sensors and really analyze that properly. We're working with a company from the university, but it's just a spin-out from the University of Bristol, and they've got patents within AI. And in my view, a lot of the companies who are using AI are more system integrators than probably what you need. I think you need to have a robust AI business with good IP behind it before you look at it in terms of IoT. And I think that's where the market's going to go. I think there's got to be a big shakedown in AI over the next 2 years. And I think we've got to be careful how we use AI and IoT, because you might get the wrong deliverable or an output. So I think we've got to look at it now, because if you've got a lot of data there, you've got to try and find out the unknowns. And this is where a lot of the businesses are now. They've got the data and you've got to find out the unknowns. And AI, in certain instances, is a good way to do it.
Thank you, Pete. I'm sure, Nick, you have some information you would like to add to this.
Well, if I go back, and I'll try and incorporate an AI angle to it, Nassia, you did spring that one on us.
Yes, I did.
I go back to the question on design, and again, I'll take a certain angle of it because this is such a broad subject. One of the ways of answering the question, how do you design, is actually to look backwards rather than forwards, which is what mistakes have people made.
Yeah.
And so I'll start off with a couple of case studies, if I may. And they're big companies, but these principles apply to small companies as well. So, you know, we for instance, we do all of Shell's EV chargers globally. Shell initially started off with another MVNO. I won't name them, but another MVNO, and found that they couldn't give them global connectivity because they manufacture all the EV chargers in Vietnam. And they deploy them anywhere in the world, and they have to work first time. They're sealed units. There's no SIM swapping, or Shell sell the promise of 100% connectivity because you're charging your car, right? You have to be able to pay. So they found that it didn't work. And another example, we do all of Amazon. Let's just pick examples of lockers, the big yellow lockers, or the key for business, which is much more exciting. It's the automatic entry in the doors, so that any delivery driver, not just Prime, can have secure access to a door rather than leaving the parcel on the pavement, or in my case, throwing it over a gate or whatever. But Amazon also started off with a different operator, and found they couldn't get the global connectivity. So when you look back, and so actually 80% of our customers come to us from a failed IoT project. And when we double click on what failed, it was the design, but the element of the design was the device design. And they start saying, well, I had no idea. I thought it was just like my cell phone. You know, I put a SIM in and I get connectivity. And of course, it's nothing like that. And they don't have firmware engineers. They don't keep track of the different modules and the different firmware revisions. They don't understand the difference between battery life management, the EDRX protocol, and how to optimize that, and the clock on what happens when you lose connectivity and how that drains the battery. I mean, they just don't want to understand any of that. And the person who designed their device didn't understand any of it either, because they don't understand connectivity. So the aspect that I want to double click on is that 80%, at least we found, and there's a lot of other surveys, analyst surveys have found out there, 80% of IoT projects that fail, the primary reason is actually because the device didn't work. It was much more complicated than people thought. So what we do is that we always start with the device, and we start with the firmware, and we start with the use case. And specifically, if I can be allowed to mention a product, we actually have a device resident application that essentially is called Smart Connect, but essentially it chooses the connectivity. If you think about the history of the IoT business, the switch, the RSP, the remote SIM provisioning, the switch was always resident within the operator. You know, Vodafone choose the roaming agreements, Vodafone own the switch. In the last 5-6 years, the switch is abstracted to one layer above. The MVNOs sit above the MNOs. The MVNO makes the decision on the switch. It's one of their core value props. Now, our belief is that what's now happening is that the switch is moving into the device. And with multi-RAT, the switch has to be in the device. In other words, it has to be the other way up. The device has to choose the connectivity, not the players and their P&L and their business model. The device has to be agnostic and choose the connectivity, which means that the logic has to be device resident. And you have to have an application that has the intelligence to look at signal strength and latency, maybe cost. I mean, all the elements of the use case to say, what is the best connectivity for this device right now? If it's a EV charger, is it Wi-Fi because it's free, home charger, or is it cellular because the Wi-Fi won't go through the wall and Halo's not here yet, next generation of Wi-Fi? So if you accept that the intelligence is moving to the edge, then the switch is moving to the edge, and the switch is making decisions based on not humans, but data. And I think that's where one of the ways in which AI will come in is that you'll get algorithmic based switching based on context and status of what's happening, and then you'll get AI optimized, providing you're agnostic to wrap types and agnostic to operators and agnostic, as I said earlier, to localization versus roaming. You have to have all those three, or you won't get 100% connectivity, which is what people want. And then the AI will probably become the primary driver of that switching, not people in an abstracted model saying, I'm going to make switching decisions, or as an operator, I'm going to make switching decisions to maximize my P&L. So I think that's where we're going. And the difficulties of it, all the market data says 80% of IoT failures in projects are actually down to the design of the device.
That's very interesting statistic right there. 80%, it's a big number. And earlier, Mathias was talking about scalability. So, Nick, if I may stay with you for one more question, because it's very important what you just said there, and that's, do you believe that if we solve the conundrum around devices and having the proper firmware and it will allow us to scale the solutions more than we're able to do today?
Oh, yeah, of course. I do. I mean, the history of the IT industry shows that when hardware, if you can solve the hardware, the device side of it, the scalability, you hit the inflection point of adoption, and that's where the scalability, adoption of any technology going back 40, 50 years has always tracked. There needs to be a universal standard that everybody agrees on, and there needs to be interoperability. And you take open systems, you take cloud, you take cell phones. My first mobile phone, I could only call Vodafone because I had a Vodafone SIM. I had to ask you what network you were on before I could call you, right? So there's nothing new here. You have an interoperability, which we're getting with standards like EUICC, SGP32, and whatever. And you need to be able to, the common standards, and you need to be able to be agnostic, which is the interoperability piece. So yes, do I believe that will happen? Yes, I believe it will, because it's proven to happen and it's logical it will happen. But we can't assume that people will have to. The difference between the mobile phone market and the IoT market from a device point of view is that every IoT product is different to every other IoT product. Whereas in the mobile phone market, there's only 7 mobile phones. So we've solved that. The manufacturers have solved the problem. But now we're asking the users to solve the problem because their device is unique. We're asking them to be hardware design engineers. And so you have to package it, productize it, move the application down to the device and make the device intelligent. But if you can do that, absolutely, it proves, and there's plenty of case studies that prove that adoption massively accelerates if you can say your device will connect 100%, and I don't mean 99.5, 100%, every device in every location at every time is 100% connectivity, then of course adoption explodes. And I think that's what we should be aiming for as an industry.
That makes a lot of sense. And Peter, you're also doing quite a bit of work on the device, on the edge. And I know that you've been doing a lot of hands-on work on putting those devices together. So what has been your experience architecting this IoT solutions, and what information can you share with us, especially on what we shouldn't be doing?
That's a reaching question. I think coming back to what Nick says, look at the edge first, and I think that's the most important thing. I do believe that we're moving away from base stations now, in that the way the sensors are looking to be developed, and we've done one with a satellite company where we've embedded a sensor into a direct satellite board in the tiny, and that's pinging directly into satellite or even into 4G. And I think that's the way things are going to go. the base stations are too clunky at the minute. Your multi-text and whatever or curlinks, they might fall away, but it depends on how many sensors you're looking at. If you're looking at a hell of a lot of sensors, put a base station in. But I know a lot of the companies now are trying to do it on the edge, and coming back to being smart on the edge is so important. Like Nick was saying, and I think it was Nick, that if that's right, you're gonna get an adoption of IoT massive. But I do think a lot of people are working in the industry at this moment in time to make sure that the base stations are, shall we say, going to disappear in certain ways in the next few years. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that's very good. Thank you, Peter. Mathias, we heard earlier today during the morning a little bit about the concerns around security and privacy, and you mentioned on the intro as well that that's part of the whole idea of designing IoT solutions. Can we stay with that a little bit? And how can we effectively and efficiently address the security element, the privacy element, especially when we're talking, and Nick and Pete, we talk about smart devices, edge, and ensuring that the device itself is ready to be deployed, and being one of the most, I would say, the element that can make the IoT projects fail. So what have you seen in terms of like, how can we bring this security element? Because in most cases, from my experience, it's a lot of an afterthought.
Yeah, so it's interesting because when you talk to customers about security, they are completely differently educated, right? When it comes to security and especially security in the cellular domain. I mean, you can't believe how many customers we had who reported, a stolen SIM card. So, the very, very simple thing is like you get down the street here, you rip something out of the scooter, you plug it in your Android tablet and you start watching Netflix, right? And it's not restricted to just that scooter, right? And this is, quite frankly, this is so easy for all of us here. It's table stakes, right? But it's so easy to do, to just lock this one SIM card to this EMI device. To all of us, it seems logical. Quite frankly, the green fields out there, they don't think about that, right? Like they just deploy 10 devices and then one gets stolen and something happens. So it's the very, very, call it basic education of what you should be taking care of. And then it goes over, call it a little bit more advanced technologies, right? You want to make sure that, for example, your device fleet is really, isolated from the internet. It cannot be attacked from the outside. It does not have public IP addresses. You have one, I always call it a device fleet. You have all of your SIM cards, your devices. They are all in one bubble. And so why don't you, establish, for example, if you anyhow do this on AWS, your deployments, right? Your server architecture deployment, why don't you pipe that traffic via some direct connects into AWS directly? And with that, completely bypass public internet traffic, right? So it's just, again, massively reducing the chance in order to get hit. And then there are the very, very advanced things, right? We see them a lot in the automotive industry and so on happening, where then we speak about really, I would call them still fancy advanced things like you put own personal profiles on your SIM card, which allow you to encrypt the VPN traffic, right? Based on the encryption mechanisms you can save on a SIM card, right? So that's then fairly advanced, and probably the last ones are just doing that, meaning the really bigger ones, or where security is very, very important. But I think it's on all of us, going back to Gabriel's thought about the ecosystem, to educate all of our customers with the basic things, at least, right? That things like, I steal a SIM card and I now go online somewhere else, that these basic things don't happen. But have in mind, like, you need to be able to really isolate devices from the public internet. You need to make sure they cannot be addressed by attacks, because in the end, it's always an open gate into your company and production networks. And that's certainly very, very important to avoid.
Great, thank you, Matthias. We had a little glitch there for a second, but we are back. And Gabriel, you mentioned earlier on when you were going through the ecosystem and the information, and Matthias also mentioned just right now about educating our customers of what is important. I want to expand a little bit on this, Gabriel, if I may. What, on your discussions with the customers, what do they actually ask for? I mean, we can design all kinds of beautiful solutions, but in the end of the day, what are the customers looking for?
That's then I will use Nick's statement to reply this one. Each device is unique, so it depends on the segment. So there are some customers looking for, I would say, energy optimization, others looking for cost savings, others looking for whatever. So, but the idea here, it's always one of the items that I've been hearing a lot. It's about how we could standardize IoT in order to be more, smart into this ecosystem and etc. So, okay, you were talking about ecosystem, how we could be smart using those solutions and etc. So that's one of the points that I'd like to highlight here. So each segment, I would say, has your different, or they can use a different type of protocol. So it depends on, again, the informations they are looking, the type of device they will interact, and etc. But let's bring this for a real example, and let's imagine an OEM. Okay, so you are an American company, then you are producing your device in China and selling this device in, I don't know, in Europe. Okay, so the point here is, do you know how your device will react under certain circumstances? So in terms of network, if they will perform properly, if the network's not good enough, if I can switch to another sponsor, or if I will have problems in terms of device performance efficiency and etc. So I will reply this in a generical way, but that's the reality. So each case is a unique case. Then we need to discuss, understand with the customer what are their needs, and this is the second part. So I would say on IoT we cannot commoditize the business. So we need to understand deeply the market, the customer needs, and then join forces to provide the best solution for them. So that's it. There is no clear answer about that, because again, each device is a device, and each case is a different case.
Okay, that's very interesting. So there is no one size fits all in IoT. And that's quite interesting, gentlemen, because if you go back, 4 years, 5 years ago, everybody was looking to packetize IoT, off-the-shelf IoT. And perhaps, one of the key reasons that a lot of the use cases did not go into production is because those packetized solutions do not fit into each use case. So we have a few more minutes in our session, and we covered quite a few elements around designing IoT. I would like us to unpack for our audience the best practices. So if we're looking to deploy an IoT solution, what should we be aware of, from the design standpoint? And I'm going to start with you, Nick. You knew it because you unmuted.
I came off mute. Something told me that you were going to start with me. Best practices. Well, let me tell you perhaps what you shouldn't do, because there's, as Gabriel just says, there is no package solution. We think, at least, what you shouldn't do is go to a vendor's website and click you want a certain number of SIMs at a certain price, and then just go straight into a POC, because statistically you're betting against the casino. You will be one of the 80% that fail. By the way, that statistic you said was interesting is and there's a lot of analyst reports, one in particular that surveyed 1,000 users and said, who had failed at IoT, and said, when you look back, what was the reason that you failed? And 80% of them said, I totally underestimated the device. I went straight to POC. So that is so we see that because we and other companies, of course, get contacted. It didn't work. You only get 2 goes at this before you get moved out of your job and they decide IoT is a bad idea. So I would say the lesson learned is don't go to POC. That's at step 3, if you like, on a 5-step process. Start with the business case. What are you trying to achieve? Obviously, a lot of people don't. They think it's a technical case. It's a business case. Then start with the designing the device for the business case. And POC is actually something you do. It might be something you do a year or 18 months in, actually, which puts a lot of strain on IoT companies' P&Ls, because you think, how do I monetize that? And it becomes a services or a consultancy-led process. You ask the question, I'll finish off by saying, you ask the question, what do customers want? And I would answer that by saying they don't know what they want. That's the problem. They actually need to be educated and handheld through that journey that Gabriel was talking about. And it's a personalized journey for them. It's completely different to what another company will need to do, even if they're in the same business as them. They'll have a different device, a different use case. And so they don't know what they want. And so you have to have a services-led consultative approach, and you have to really understand it starts with the business case, not with pushing SIMs into a device and trying to do a POC, which is where most people start. And I think that's the biggest lesson I would point out.
Makes a lot of sense. I saw both Peter and Mathias shaking their heads. So we have a couple minutes left, gentlemen. So Peter, what do you think? What do the customers want? And you have a kind of unique customer base, which is more government bodies than the rest of the folks. Yeah,
it's government defense. I agree with Nick in coming back to the stats. 80% of IoT projects fail because of device. And just to say what Nick said, you've got to look at the business case, and you've got to look at the variables of the data that you need to get to your business case. And I think that's where a lot of things fail, where you might need 10 devices reporting on different things to associate with your business case. And if you don't get them right, you're not going to succeed. And also from devices, you can buy devices for $10, you can buy them for $500. And what you've got to look at, you've got to test those devices, not just from the connectivity back into the cloud, but the RF side of it as well. And that's really important. And we've got a system out there at the minute. We're testing RF devices in a peatland area, which is semi-wooded. And we're getting data now. Some of it's failed and some of it's good. So we're getting this. And it's not a POC. This is just testing the devices now too. And I agree with Nick. The POC could be a year down the line.
Yeah. All right. We are at time, gentlemen. But Mathias, I want to give you a minute because I saw that you had some comments and unmuted to round us up this session.
Okay. So I tried to make a roundup. No, I mean, it was really very interesting. And I mean, I nodded because, I exactly saw what Nick spoke about, what Pete and what Gabriel spoke about, right? I think, in the IoT ecosystem, we see all the same things. It's like, give the customer a helping hand, right? Educate them on what's going on, make their project successful, and you will be successful in the end with it as well. Just handing out a few SIMs, it's exactly as Pete said, is not exactly what will work. Let's all create together an ecosystem, and I think all of us, including, of course, the entire audience out there on the screens, will participate from that in the very good. And with that, I hand it over to you, Nassia.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We are at time, folks, and this we could have kept talking about this for a long time. I know we're just scratching the surface here, but this is such an immense and complicated subject. With that said, Nick, Mathias, Pete, Gabriel, gentlemen, thank you so much for your participation and your insights.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.